So in the last video you might remember I mentioned these rubber, I'd use that loosely, blocks and how they'd slip down. Now I think these, let's take one out here, if you look closely there's several layers. I think they've just oozed down, so that should be a square block and not as it is now all messed up and oozed and stuff. Right, I'm having a go at reforming the dual 50/50 capacitor, smoothing capacitor in the set. I've got my reforming unit here that's sticking out it should stick out 240 volts. The capacitor's maximum 275, so that's alright. I do have a 350 option on this unit. Obviously that's its absolute peak maximum rating, so obviously its normal working voltage is 275, so we're sticking a little bit less than that in it. Now this meter here is measuring the current across a resistor inside here, so we should see how many milliamps is across there. So one volt on here is equivalent to 10 milliamps. And on this side here on the fluke we're looking at the voltage actually going into the capacitor. So as the current comes down the voltage should go up, and unfortunately that's not what I'm seeing on one half of the capacitor here, so it's very likely duff. So let's have a go. So you can see the voltage, sorry, the current is coming down as the capacitor is slightly reforming, and then I'll show you this. So this is the voltage, so we've got 206 and it's climbing up, 207, 208, the current is coming down, the voltage is still going up, and what happens is it stabilizes around 10 milliamps or 1 volt on the orange meter there, and then the voltage starts dropping. So we've got 210 going into it. Remember there's 240 actually it can produce, so we've got 210 at the moment, and now you see the voltage is hovering around 210, going down now, and the current is going back up very slightly. 209.4, 209.3 there. That sort of signifies that capacitor is pretty much done. Right, so with the failure of the smoothing capacitor, the original one here, I've wired in a couple of 47 UFs at, I think these are 450 volts, so absolutely ample. And I've also taken the opportunity to change one Hunt's capacitor which had fallen apart, this one here, and I've also changed the AVC capacitor here, and that should be enough to get the set working. We've got a cathode bypass capacitor here. I think this one's screen grid decoupling, so that'll probably have to go. And these two here, that's the antenna isolation, and that's the antenna earth isolation, that big one there. So no need to replace those at the moment. So it's all back together, and I think we should now plug it in and see what's going to happen. So I'm pretty confident nothing's going to blow up here, so I'm going to plug it straight in. So I've got my quick block test here, safe block, quick block, quick test, fast test, quick block, something, test, and I'm just going to plug it in there. That's not quite brilliant. Now this sort of thing where you replace capacitors can take a fair while, so not really worth videoing, but let's plug it in and see what happens. Obviously that chassis is going to be live as soon as I turn this on. Now we just wait. I can see some heater glowage. These do take a little time to warm up. There we go.
He was making the point back then. So this sort of thing has.
So it all works.
And it will be fascinating.
That's going to get
see how the team
really hot.
Interests me as well that actually there's something of a racist.
Not a sensitive set.
To do what's right, if you wanted to bring.
But it's only a cheap old thing.
Oh.
So at least we've got it working.
We should talk about what's happening.
Now we can go underneath and replace anything else that needs replacing under there.
There's lots up in the air, not least
So
that
let's
question of whether
turn
Ben
it round
Stokes is
and
going to
have
be
a
ready
look.
for it. The whole thing has been bizarre, really. I think from an England perspective, there's been lots of rain up in the Gold Coast, up in Queensland, where they are preparing.
Nice
There's
bright
a full
lights.
game starting
It's
on
gonna look
Tuesday.
really
The really
good at
odd
night.
thing, of course, is that quite a few of the players all the players.
So after making sure the radio works, the next thing I'm going to do is change the cathode bypass capacitor, which is this thing here. And you can see the size of the things. Now this one here is 50 UF, I think, at 25 volts, I believe. They're always pretty low voltage, or fairly low voltage. This one's actually 12 volts, so I'm going to put a 25 volt in, and that should make it a bit better. And the real only capacitor then that I need to change is this one here. I'm unlikely to plug an aerial into this thing ever, so I'm going to leave those two there. Let me think about that, but certainly these two have got to go now, so I'm going to get on with that. Well, here's the radio all back in its cabinet. Very nice it looks too. I used Bakelite polish, this Grey Gate paste polishing number 5, which is about £2 a tube, I think it is, £1.95 to £2.50 a tube or something, not particularly dear. Does an excellent job. I've also got to mix some paint up and cover these chips here. There's 1 or 2 chips in this beige paint here, so I'm going to try and get a paint match for that. And also looking at online photos, something I didn't spot was there was some sort of metal disc in here. I assume it was like a brass colour. So I'm going to use some sheet brass here, and we're going to cut out a circle to put in here. Now this knob is very slightly domed, so we're going to have to see how we get on with that, because I haven't got anything big enough to dome this. Anything up to about 60mm I have, but that's much greater than that, so we'll have to see how we get on, and that's one reason why I've used 5 thou brass sheets. Now I suspect the brass was actually coated. I'm not 100% sure, I haven't seen one in the flesh, but I suspect it was more like of a champagne gold type colour that was sort of anodised or lacquered in some way. I wouldn't think they'd have plain brass, because I'm not sure it actually goes with the colours, but that's what we're going to have to do. Now I've got my measurements here, so I use my micrometer. It's 47.40 millimeters across. Divide that by 2, you get 23.7 millimeters, and I'm going to use a compass cutter in the brass just to cut the circle out. So I'm going to get on with that, and I'll come back when I'm finished, or when I've ruined it, I should say. Well, I've made a disc for the knob here, and I've lacquered it. I don't think, because I've cut the disc quite thin, I don't think the doming is going to matter too much actually. Very hard to get all the scratches out of it, but I don't think it's too bad. I might have another go one day, but yeah, quite difficult to get all the tiny scratches out of the brass. I've used sandpaper, I've used nail files, I've used metal polish, but yeah, that'll have to do. So I'm just gonna put a little bit of Evo stick on and let that go off for a couple of minutes. And then we'll stick the disc on the front. Done a one disc, one knob. Let's just push it in there. And I'm sure this had some sort of brushed finish on it originally. I see, just from pure memory, I don't think it had a shiny plain brass disc on. But yeah, that's seated quite well. Let's get it the right way around. Yeah. Yeah. And I've just gone and put a load of Evo stick. Let me just wipe that off with some acetone. And that'll finish that. I'm going to pick that off afterwards. Yeah, much better. Now all I need to do is just go around the gold paint here. Right, I've mixed up quite a liquid mix of Humbrol number 16 this is, which I think is brass. I can't remember, it might be gold. And this is quite easy, there's a little recess here, so all I'm doing is just running the brush along and picking up a little bit more paint and running it along, and that should clean up that edge quite nicely. And I should put the radio on each side, on each pass, just to make it easy rather than painting upwards and painting and just letting the thinners and the brush do the work. Yeah, because it's a metallic paint, you really need to keep mixing it up because the particles will settle at the bottom quite quickly. But if you get it the right consistency, your paint should do the work for you. And that's pretty much an exact mix, an exact match for the original. this edge is not too bad actually. Being at the top, it was the bottom that was a little bit marked and looked a little bit worn. Okay, and one last edge. So just here is it? I've probably got a bit too much paint on, and just watch your loading on your brush. Bit of fluff there. And if you hold your wrists like this and just let that, so you've got a pivot point here, should be a nice easy process. There, just went off a bit there. There, didn't take long at all. There, done. Can't even see it, can you? So to cover up these little chips that was showing the brown Bakelite through, I've mixed up some acrylic paint. I've used Vallejo, khaki and a bit of white, mixed them up and almost got an exact match straight away. There's just one spot there. There, and I challenge you to see any of those chips. There weren't very many, but they were quite noticeable in there. All gone. So here's the radio all finished. Most of the time in restoration was spent on cosmetic stuff, obviously, cleaning the cabinet and everything. Electronically, I've just replaced some capacitors, the two smoothing electrolytics and a couple of resistors. I've aligned it and yeah, it's working well. Can't play any music obviously, but yeah, very pleased with it. Anyway, thanks for watching, plenty more to come. I've got a Philips set on the go at the moment, I've got a GEC set, and several other things in progress, so look out for those coming up, and I'll leave you with this bedtime radio.
Then Wigan a third, 45 points, but they've only played 21. Wycombe Wanderers up to 45 points from 24 games, and Aaron, you watched them win at Charlton.
I did. It's